Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our respected viewers and welcome on Youth Matters with me, your host Sakina Habib. In a world where parenting challenges are exceeding and unfolding in the most effective ways, it becomes an utmost necessity to address certain common parenting mistakes to avoid, whilst also taking advantage of opportunities that the modern era presents. Maintaining intentional and healthy relationships has never been easy and will always tend to probe excessive challenges. However, to what extent can we as parents try our best on how to manage adult conflict or simply want some solid, evidence based, and spiritually inspired guidance on raising good human beings without wearing ourselves out completely? Also, before I move on today's program, it is my moral duty to mention that with the ongoing tragic situation in Gaza, we as parents are also struggling on sharing and discussing these narratives with our children. In light of these narratives, it is important to know how to collectively address this trauma that we all are witnessing before our very eyes, and for which, of course, my guest today on my program, Sister Marzia Hassan, will be sharing a list of resources for parents on her website of www.marziahassan.com as well as www.strongmuslimfamilies.com. The least we can do right now is really to raise awareness, donate, express our grief along with prayers, and stand for the oppressed ones in Palestine. I would like to briefly introduce my guest for today. She's a profound guest. Her name is Marzia Hassan. She is a registered social worker, is an author, public speaker, and marriage and family therapist, working with individuals, couples, and families. After obtaining her master's in social work from the University of Toronto, she started Family Connections International, a psychotherapy practice based in Toronto and online. Having lived, studied, and experienced life on three continents, Marzia combines Western scientific thought with Eastern spiritual wisdom to bring a unique and practical aspect to her work with families. She speaks and writes about the challenges of family relationships in the modern world and about practical spirituality for modern Muslims. She is the author of Parenting in the Age of Facebook, Raising the Next Generation. In addition to providing counseling, Marzia facilitates various parenting, self-development, and spiritual learning groups for youths, adults, and families all over the world, including Canada, US, Europe, and South Asia. She also serves on the boards of various charitable organizations, including IDRF, International Development and Relief Foundation, one of the top charities in Canada. Jaffrey Support Services, a community-based social services agency that she helped found in 2008, and Nasiha Mental Health. And last but not least, Marzia is the mother of three conscious young adults and lives in her now empty nest in Toronto. Without much further ado, I would like to welcome my special guest on board. Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum
alaikum.
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
How, Alhamdulillah, I'm good. It is a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Sister Marzia, thank you so much for coming on with this amazing, great topic that I feel really needs to be addressed. As I mentioned, even in the introduction, right now there's a lot of ongoing crisis around the world, and we as parents are also really in that complicated situation of how to address these narratives and to talk about these narratives with our children and for the safety and security and future of our children as well. Now, I'm sure you would like to also just add a bit about the resources that you will be putting up, inshallah, on your website. And, how has my first question will definitely be that how has parenting changed in the 21st century? In what ways are we parenting differently than we were parented? And are the trends positive?
Okay. So, absolutely, a really important question to start with. First of all, we have to recognize that each generation of parents struggles with different things. However, never before has the world shifted quite so radically, quite so soon. So, one of the biggest changes that we have seen just in the last couple of decades is obviously the age of technology, the digital age, what we call. Okay. Even before we entered the digital age, parenting had started to shift. And in order to understand how, we need to understand two basics of parenting. So we think of parenting as on two different axes. Okay. One axis or one part of parenting is how responsive we are to children, to their emotional needs, to their physical needs, to their mental well being needs. And then to understand how demanding we are of them, what we expect from them, what we expect of them. And traditionally, the way we were parented is that our parents were very high on the expectations. So, just the idea that children should be seen and not heard, for example, is an example of how parents expected a lot from children. And in terms of responsiveness to them, that was not at the top of their mind. As long as children were fed, bathed, went to school, that was kind of the limit. Generally, it's not that parents didn't love their kids. Obviously, they loved them deeply, but this was not keeping them up at night. How happy is my child, right?
Yeah.
In the present days, the way, one of the great shifts has been that parents are extremely responsive to their children's mental, emotional well being. Many parents, before they make any decisions, will think about, is my child going to be happy with this? Are they adjusting okay? Do they like their teacher? Do they like their school? These questions were not asked when we were growing up. Okay. So this is one of the biggest shifts that we have seen. And so, what we have seen is that one of the biggest mistakes parents make today is giving too much and expecting too little from children. And we do this with the best of intentions. Why are we doing this? We obviously want healthy, well-adjusted children. And sadly, it has not resulted in that. Children today are no happier than they were in the past. There is a lot of anxiety, there is a lot of depression amongst children, amongst the youth. And while this is a very complicated topic, right, I don't want to minimize it. There are many reasons for that. Our parenting strategies may not be helping all that much.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, for example, that traditionally parents were quite strict with their children, and many of us say that we turned out okay. But it seems that parents today are more lenient with their children. So, what do you think? Like, what is your opinion on this? Do you think is it a good thing?
So again, leniency means what? Means that we are not that strict about following rules, right? And one thing that we need to understand is that children, when they are, especially the younger they are developmentally not capable of seeing what is good for them. You know, so they obviously need somebody who's older, wiser, to kind of keep them safe. And I don't mean safe just physically. We can talk about anxiety of parents. But one of the ways we keep them safe is by setting some limits to their behavior, by setting boundaries. And parents today struggle with doing that. They struggle with maintaining strong boundaries and what might help for parents is to understand that even though children may resist it in the short term, that's their job. Their job is to try and become independent, to try and test where those boundaries are. So they're not doing anything which is inappropriate. that is not a signal for us that we should not have those boundaries in place. There's a difference, right? One is my child's unhappy, therefore I must do something different. However, when we are really on the ball kind of it with parenting, then what we can do is recognize this is not great for them, help them validate that, connect with them, and still maintain our boundaries. This is not a signal that we should let go, because what we find in parenting, when we do research on it, that when parents let go of the boundaries, it makes children actually very anxious. It's not good for them, even though they may be struggling with those boundaries.
Absolutely. I think I will also resonate on this point. It is very true. Sometimes, as parents, I think we just somewhere in the line get emotional about the fact that because I want to keep my child happy, I don't want any sort of hurtful feelings, to incline towards them. And so that is one of the reasons why we tend to act in a certain way. Sister Marzia, it seems that psychology today is showing us how important the parent and child bond is, and that how we respond to our children has a major impact on them. What is this impact, and how can parents not damage their children?
Okay, really good question. That is what a lot of parents are. When I'm working with parents, a lot of them will express, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about attachment theory. And have I damaged my kids beyond repair? Okay, so let's back up a little bit. Before we even talk about psychology, let's talk about what Islam teaches us about parenting. And what is amazing is that everything that we have been, that Islam has taught us for many years is now being validated by science. So, what that means is, I keep coming back to this concept, what I call the Islamic parenting contract. Okay, so let's just take a minute to understand what that is. The way I like to, conceptualize parenting is that it's an agreement, it's a contract between me and God. Okay, and I have been asked to fulfill my responsibility in 3 stages. The first stage is the stage of 0 to 7, when, we are all familiar with the hadith, which says that from 0 to 7, the child is kind of the king, right? And the parent is supposed to follow the child. What does that mean? That is the age when you are responsive to the child. So if a child cries, you can't spoil them. You pick them up and you comfort them. That is what the child needs. When they are playing, when they're exploring, that is what the child needs. So your job, your role at that point is to follow the lead of the child and respond to what they're doing. The second part of parenting is the discipline period, right? From 7 to 14, that's when we're asked to kind of be more assertive in our discipline. And that's when we're teaching the children life skills. We are teaching them that there are boundaries, that even though you want to explore, not everything is yours to explore. There are some limits to that. And then from the age of 14 to 21 is when, we are kind of a consultant to the child. We have said that the child is a wazir, which means what? That we, whatever we've taught them, that's the time when they're going to test it out. You give them additional freedom and you let them go in the world and test what they have been learned. And then at the age of 21, your job is done. You are not asked to parent beyond the age of 21, which is so hard for Desi parents to understand, right?
Yes.
When parents are struggling with adult children, one of the things is to remind ourselves, I am dealing with an adult. And if I'm dealing with an adult, my relationship has to be that between two adults. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. And as you mentioned, I think it's because of our culture. I think the way you said Desi culture, like because our parents are so attached to us, so like it's really difficult for them to let go of us. And also, uh, somewhere, yes, along the lines, that's where sometimes conflicts and clashes uh, do come in between, because now this adult wants their freedom, and they're being held back because of course we will not say it's something negative, because as parents we have a lot of love for our children in our hearts. We've raised them and everything, and yeah, so it becomes difficult now. Especially as mothers, mothers tend to be very hard on themselves when it comes to the role of parenting, because they tend to set impossibly high and unrealistic standards for themselves. How can, mothers remind themselves that they are human beings and that it is okay to make mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. Another, very important question. So let's just backtrack, in the sense that when we talked about the first 7 years, when we talk about how important the parent child bond is, that's the age, Islamically, we're told to build the bond. And science tells us, the way we react, respond to our children, in those 7 years is actually very important, because that's the time when we are building a relationship of mutual trust, and the child will develop their model of the world based on that relationship. So it is absolutely important. Now, when mothers generally learn of this, the first response is kind of panic, including me. When I didn't know all that I know today about parenting when I was a young mom. Okay. So the idea is that we go into, self criticism. And even after that, right, if we have had a bad day, we've, acted out with children, we've yelled, we've said things that we don't mean to. And then we go into this spiral of self criticism. And one thing we need to ask ourselves is that helping me be a better mom? When I have this unrealistically high standard that I'm never going to have a bad day, that I should, be living in this enlightened mode all the time, and if I don't, then what happens, right? First of all, we need to understand that there are no perfect mothers, and we will not be the first one, and even with all our mistakes, alhamdulillah, generally the children turn out okay. They're not as fragile as we think they are. We can't break them with, one yelling, for example. Okay. Having said that, obviously, what can we do? We can, do our best in any given moment. And when we go off track, we do exactly what we do in life. We make amends. We come back, we apologize, we take responsibility, we renew our attention, and we do the same thing. And that is, even God does not expect us to be perfect, because otherwise there wouldn't be tawbah, there wouldn't be repentance, there wouldn't be asking for forgiveness. So human beings are meant to make mistakes, and when as mothers we are hard on ourselves, we need to remind ourselves that that is not doing any good for our kids. When we are unhappy, I have this saying in my house: when mama's not happy, no one's happy. And when mama's happy, everyone's happy. We set the emotional tone in our families. And if we work on our own well being based on that reality, it's not selfish. I'm actually doing this for my family so that the emotional tone in the home is positive. Then it's a whole different way of looking at self-care, at looking after my own needs, speaking up, asking for help, all of those things.
Sister Maria, the other day I was going through this post that resonates with your point right now. It's very true that the post says your children don't belong to you. You're on borrowed time with them. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to build a better human being, not to build a mini version of you and all your
Yes.
deflated hopes and dreams. So help them become the best them and not the best you. And I think this post resonates especially to our Desi culture, because oftentimes it happens like you want to perfect this human being so much as per to your standard, just because maybe there were some things that you could not accomplish in your lifetime, and so now you expect them to do it. It doesn't work like that, because every individual is different, has his or her own identity. And as you said, there comes a time, there comes a point in life when you need to let them go, because at the end of the day, they're not yours forever. And even the Quran mentions this, right? It says that al mal wal banoon fitna. In some places it says they are the zinatul hayat dunya. So that means that they are just adornments of life, nothing more. And in the end, only your own good deeds, your own amals, only your, it says salihat wal baqiyat, the ones that are yours, will only take you to the final destination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is enough to say that we need to know our limits as parents. Where do our boundaries exist, as you clearly highlighted and mentioned. Now, yes, would you like to add something on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said is such a big reminder. What's our job? What's their job? What's God's job? Okay. Women in particular, we take on far more than we need to. We are not responsible for how our children turn out. Let me say that again. We are not responsible for how our children turn out. The limits of our responsibility is, did I do my job? Which is teaching them, training them, setting limits, loving them, all of that. We are only responsible for the process. Very often, when children, especially as adults, are making decisions which are not in line with the values that you have taught them, it is so easy to go down the thought pattern that I have failed, I have done something wrong. And at that point, this is exactly, everything you said is what we need to remind ourselves, that we can only do our job. It's their job to take that, to live with it as they will, and it's God's job to forgive us all, really. So this is something that, I remind myself on a daily basis, and many mothers who are so hard on themselves, it would be really valuable. It's like a daily reminder.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's a great reminder. We need to pin this down, to not just blame the mother or the father for whatever happens, because that when a child grows up and becomes an adult, and we all know that the child goes through such a process in life, such a journey, that he interacts and mingles with all sorts of individuals. Like, there are teachers, there are people from the community, there are children from different families with whom this person is interacting. So automatically, the environmental factors also play a great role. So the child will take a lot of things from here and there. It's not possible that the child will only take the things that are taught within his household. So of course the child will turn out to be very different. So we need to accept and own up. Now, moving on to talking about the digital age impact. How can the digital age impact parenting in Muslim households, and what mistakes should parents be cautious of in this regard, especially from your book, Parenting in the Age of Facebook, Raising the Next Generation? Could you discuss the role of technology in parenting and what errors parents may make when it comes to screen time and digital media?
Okay, a huge subject. We could talk for the whole weekend on this, right? I will try to just highlight some issues. The landscape of parenting changed forever as soon as we got into the digital age. Why? Before that, we had a lot more control over what children watched, what they did, what they were consuming. If they were home, they were kind of safe. We could relax. Now we know that there is no safety anywhere. I don't mean to, add panic to already panicked parents. That's not what this is about. But it is simply about the recognition of what we're up against. Coming to mistakes, one of the biggest mistakes parents make is that we give into technology way too early and without any conversation beforehand. So, what do I mean by that? We one of the ways that we can kind of fall into this trend is my 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old ask for a phone because all their friends have it and I'm the only one who doesn't have it. And this we think, oh God, they're going to feel left out, all of that, which may be true. And so we give in, we get them a phone. And then before we realize it, they're not using it wisely. They are spending far too much time on it. They are accessing stuff they wouldn't, that we don't approve of. All of this is happening. Now, the issue is that let's backtrack. Okay. One of the best things you can do is, first of all, delay technology as long as possible. Especially smartphones, as long as you possibly can hold out. And I know it's not easy. If you think the conversations about getting a phone are exhausting and annoying and frustrating, when the phone comes in, it gets much worse because then you are in a constant battle of trying to monitor. Once they are about to get the phone, when you're about to upgrade any technology, there should be a conversation about how it's going to be used, what are the limits, what is your role, what is their role, how are they going to show you that they are being responsible. We are raising, in this day and age, we are raising digital citizens. And just like we would teach them about the safety of the road, safety of going alone, we have to teach them online safety. Digital citizenship is a huge thing. The good thing is there's a lot of resources available for those things today. And so we have a conversation and we check in. Every few weeks we have a family meeting. We kind of discuss how is it going. And something's not going well. Don't wait till an event happens or a trigger happens to discuss the use of technology. This needs to be an ongoing conversation. So every 2 weeks, okay, what are you struggling with? What am I struggling with? What rooms is the phone allowed? Are there any sacred times? Are there any sacred spaces in our home where there is no technology? And obviously, it has to start with ourselves. If we are training the kids to be good digital citizens, not to overconsume, we need to model that first and foremost.
Absolutely. Children really look up to us as their role models, and within our households, obviously, if they're going to see their mother, for example, reading books, or she's involved in some sort of art activity or cooking activity, then the child will automatically start following that pattern and get interested in those areas. And of course, if the mother and father are both onto their smartphones, then the child will also be inquisitive and curious to know that, okay, what is this gadget? And which is very common right now in so many households, because it is inevitable to not be in touch with these gadgets. All our work depends on these gadgets and smartphones. However, I think it's very important to create that sort of boundary within our homes, to create an hourly sort of based system where even the child should understand, okay, for example, if it's dinner time, phones should be kept away, or if it's family time, then it's only family time. If it's homework time, it's homework time. So that's very important. Now let's come down to my favorite question, and that is, let's talk about grandparents for a minute. It oftentimes gets difficult to maintain healthy relationships with our own parents due to our ongoing hectic life schedules and the kids. What few key aspects can one look into to help maintain a healthy bond on both sides of the family? I think this question is very much related to people who even live in joint families.
Yes, so joint families are a whole different ballgame. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure how to address that in a very short amount of time, but let's just talk about the connection with our own parents and even from a parenting perspective, we really need to understand that the bond between grandparents and children is so good for them. When we have good relationships with our parents, with our in-laws, that is of huge benefit to kids. How? It gives them a sense of identity. It gives them a sense of security. They know where they are in the world, where they fit in. It's, I've written about this, you can probably find it on one of my websites, that how important grandparents are in a child's life. Now, obviously, this thing about we are all busy. Yes, we are.
Mhm.
And we still need to make time for things that are important. Especially as Muslims, it is non negotiable for us to continue to have a respectful, close, and attentive relationship to our parents. What that looks like in each household may be different, depending on the parents' age, depending on what their needs are. However, it starts with an intention. If we are struggling, for example, with relationship with in-laws, very common scenario, what happens is that sometimes our children pay the price. Moms especially tend to be the gatekeepers for children's attention, access to them. And one of the big mistakes that I see very often in many households is that if there is conflict between in-laws and the mother, the children lose access to the grandparents, or the access becomes very strained. And if we just recognize that we are literally standing in the way of our children's well-being, then moms will make a different choice. I'm not minimizing that things can get very complicated, that it is hard, it is very, very challenging, and there are benefits to our children still. No matter how imperfect their grandparents are, there is a lot of benefit to them of being in regular contact with their grandparents. So I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, but I'm happy to say more if you have time.
I think I agree with you on this. I totally agree with you on this. I myself can say this for a fact. I spent a lot of great time of my childhood uh, in my grandma's house, and I have a lot of memories etched in my head up until today. I sometimes even see her in my dreams, and I remember those memories that I used to have in her house, cycling about or just going to her and listening to her reciting the Holy Quran or reading stories to me. And sometimes, if my mom would even scold me, she would be the one to protect me. So, these are some memories that you remember sometimes. And it's very true that, it's the legacy that we need to carry on, even as the future generations, to our children, to maintain that healthy relationship. Because according to Islam as well, it is so important to maintain healthy relationships with your parents, with your grandparents, with all your family members. So yes, given with the hectic life schedule that we have today, it is important to take that time out. Also, to add further on to this point, traveling makes children very smart, and I think from a very young age, especially if they've not started schooling and everything, you should make a point to travel as much as possible. Maybe use this time to have meetups or gatherings with their grandparents, because then once they grow up, they get so busy in their study life, and it becomes difficult. Only during summer vacation time they can just have these gatherings. So yes, we should make a point in our lives, absolutely. Sister Marzia, do you have online resources for parents, and how can they access these, and how do they contact you?
Okay, absolutely. So I have a lot of resources. I somehow don't remember. I don't always remember where they live. But the best ways to access resources is I have a public Facebook page which has a lot of videos, full length videos on sessions that we've had with parents on many different topics. That is one place. My website, which is, I have many websites, but the one that's being developed specifically for parents right now is called strongmuslimfamilies.com. And that will have, it's a growing library, but that will have resources to find out what's happening with me, what I'm working on, things that are, coming up. Probably Instagram is where I tend to post most current events. And so either the website, if you're looking for something in particular, just Google it with my name. Chances are I've written about it or spoken about it. I also have a podcast which is called Family Connections Radio, Family Connections being one word. All of these links are on a different website, which is marziahassan.com. So if you go there, there will be links to a lot of the resources.
Thank you so much, Sister Marzia, for your precious time. And there you go. Sister Marzia has shared all her details, and we had also posted her online, her website details on our screen. If you had noticed, please do get in touch with her. She's an amazing inspiration to so many women, even to me. Mashallah, she's done so much, and we can't thank you enough, because in today's time, in this challenging era, it is so important to maintain healthy relationships within our families. And you're doing a great job doing that. And also, she will be posting in a list of resources of how to communicate on the narratives with your children that are ongoing right now, related to the current crisis of Gaza and all of that. So I would like to once again thank you, Sister Marzia, for your precious time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was a real pleasure. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much to all our respected viewers. Thank you for tuning on today's program, and I hope we get to benefit from Sister Marzia's insightful talk. And once again, I would like to wish you a very good day. I would like to ask for your permission. Thank you. This is your host, Sakina Habib, signing off. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.